Welcome to Goldfish on Games, where today we're continuing our look at the galaxy of games. And this is 201, a number that I'm sure is meant to be the amount of games on the disc. But that is as likely as me losing my gills, growing wings, and flying to the moon. So let's check out the menu, which has changed again. I think they put more time into these than they do finding games for these discs. And we have 4 pages. And there seems to be 12 games on each. Oh wait, sorry, just 11 on the last one, so that's a total of 47 games. Yep, I'm sure they're going to be counting up the variations again. And instead of trying to check out every single one of them, let's just look at those that seem interesting. And we start off with the very first game, Wild Wheels. And ooh, this looks very polished, far more than what we've seen previously. And it also looks like this is another special edition. And for those not in the know, special editions are what eGames, the creator of the Galaxy of Games discs, calls demos. They're not shareware, as they state there's no shareware on these discs, so it must be a demo. And because of that, we have 3 missions to play. But before we can do that, we need to pick a car. Or we would if most of them weren't locked out because it's, again, a special edition. So using the basic car, we get a simple racing mission to start with. And this is actually not too bad. It's not great, but it's not bad. The physics are a little much, but you do get a hang of it after a while. And this all looks pretty nice for 2001. And this first level is simple, but effective. So let's jump to the second level and... wait. It's Crazy Eggbert! He's returned! And it's our job in our driverless car to transport him and his other robo-pals to their designated places on the map, normally avoiding some obstacles and other random junk on the road while you're at it. And this really shows that while you're in a car, this isn't a simple racing game, as when you get them to their destination, they'll even play a little animation for you to celebrate. The first one gets to fire at some targets, and please let that be from his hands. Oh, phew. The second one plays some music on some keyboards, which is actually the only music in this game. And Eggbert is going into a child's playpen. How old is that egg? The final mission has you needing to turn off 2 computers to stop the berserk robots. And you can find the mission details, along with a few other things, on the buttons at the bottom of the screen. And to get to those computer cores, you need to find the helicopter add-on, which is hidden in the level. But once you've got that, and you've got a pretty steep hill, you can fly across and land in those compounds. And then it's just a case of bumping into the Control-Alt-Delete buttons that are around it, and you've won! There are a few simple races that you can do as well, and that is mostly it for this game, or at least in this state. But as it's the first game, this is surprisingly good. I wonder if the rest will hold up. And, well, the next title shows that no, they won't. As it's Box Attack. And your job is to shoot the boxes as they fall down the screen. But you can only take them out if 2 of the same types are next to each other. And you'll die if they end up squashing you. This wouldn't be so bad if it wasn't for the absolutely awful controls. I'm not sure there's a way that I can even get across how bad this game controls, as you have to click every time you want the craft to move, and then you have to click on it a second time for it to fire. It's not even tied into the basic movement of the mouse, and there's no keyboard controls either. All there is you constantly clicking to move it around. Now, bad controls I can deal with, but only if it gives you an actual chance, and this doesn't, as those boxes move quite quickly, as well as rearranging themselves when some are taken out. So you'll have to spend some time in the safe zone at the side as you wait for them to pass by you. But the next time they come around, they'll be moving even faster, so you really have to be on top of everything that's going on. And to be honest, it's actually quite a simple game, but made so much harder than it needs to be due to the weird input method. And worst of all, they used this for a number of other games, like Photo Breakout, which even has the same title screen and music. And this, as it says, is a breakout game, but one where it throws a bunch of balls to start with, and then you just have to keep them going. Which you think wouldn't be too bad, as they tend to stay at the top of the screen because that's where they start. But it has the same control method as the last game. You have to keep clicking to move the paddle around. And then randomly at some point the game will decide that you've beaten the level. I have no idea what makes that call, as it's not when all the blocks are removed. It just seems completely and utterly arbitrary. But when that happens, you'll get the second part of the name, a photo. Yes, with an F. And it was at this point I realised why these games play so badly. Touch the screen to continue. These were early touchscreen games. And for some context, these were before Microsoft released XP Tablet Edition, so they couldn't have been for those, which makes me think they might have been for those old pub quiz machines, as some of them had some games on them as well as the regular quizzes. Now, I can't be sure as I've not found any definitive details on this, but this is my idea, and I think that's also backed up by the fact that these are very low resolution games, which hints that they were running on very low powered hardware. I mean, just look how blurry everything looks. This isn't a bad capture, it's exactly how it looked on my CRT as well. And if you have any information on where these might have come from, please let me know down in the comments, as I think it would be really interesting to find out. But either way, this is another so-so game that actually takes a bit of effort to fail at, as you have to lose all your balls 5 times before it's a game over. And before we go to look at some hopefully better games, there is one last title I want to show you. The game simply called Basketball, and you just tap the ball to throw it at the hoop. That's it. And the only indication that you got a basket is some sounds, which I'm sure would have been heard well in the middle of a busy pub. This is just awful. Absolutely, completely awful. I'm going to avoid any other games based on this technology for the rest of the video. Which means next up is Drop. And it's a take on the old columns Puyo Puyo style game, as you have to switch the balls around so they form rows or columns of 3 or more. And these can only be vertical or horizontal. There's no angling in this one. And in the infinite mode, you'll work your way up through the levels as you clear more balls, which will speed up the droppings. It's not a bad game, but the lower levels you will spend far more time waiting for more colours to fall than you will moving them around. So out of the gate, it's not the most exciting puzzle game. And it does take a little too long to really get going. Which actually makes it quite cool that they also included a challenge mode. You get a list of available challenges with descriptions of what you have to do, and it might be clear all the balls or beat a set score from a pre-arranged screen. And this really adds to the game, and it's really cool that they included it. It's a simple game, but done well enough. But it's not as simple as what comes next, or at least so I thought initially, as it's tic-tac-toe, aka noughts and crosses. And left on its hardest difficulty level, it will mostly be a draw if you're playing against the computer. But thankfully, this isn't the whole game, as there's quite the range of variations. Including a 3D version, and we've had a lot of fun on this variant when we played it back on a cover disc face-off. And the AI there kept beating me, and it seems nothing has changed since. There is this chaos version where you decide to place a nought or a cross, and I didn't understand what you were meant to be doing, so I have no idea if I won or not. That seems very chaos. The same thing happened when I played the beer version. And the traffic lights. Now this is actually far more than I was expecting from the game, which actually makes it quite interesting. Of all the games we've played so far, I could actually see me coming back to this more than some of the others. The next game is Colours of War. A game that looks like it could be quite interesting, as you have to use various tools to capture as much land as possible and set it to your colour. The problem is, it's very unstable. Like, it outright crashes when I try to start it up on the Pentium 4, and on the P3 it'll run for a while and then it just starts to ignore all mouse input. All while the game is technically still running in the background, you just can't interact anymore. Which is a real shame, as by far it's one of the most unique and interesting games we've seen so far. And if you manage to get it running for any length of time, you'll find that each of those tools has a job. It can either take land in an area that's not already taken, or you can use it to expand out your current area. Or you can put down new bases that will generate more energy, because each tool takes a set amount of energy to place. And you can see how much you have by the bar that's under the unit selection. And the tools themselves roughly being in the order of least to most expensive. The missiles are some of the coolest units, as you can use them to clear out taken land. They can also be used to destroy bases, which is a bit of a double whammy really. But don't expect this game to be easy, as if the enemy gets a chance to really expand, then they can quickly take over enough territory to be a real pain. And this being a special edition, that means you've only got a few maps and missions. Also, no level editor, damn you. So while this might be a little bit buggy, it is fun when it works. Secret Circuit is next, and it's a very simple game. You have to join this point to this point, which is done by rotating the pieces on the board. Now I find it helps to work both ends at the same time, because at the tips you don't get too many choices in how you manipulate the parts. But as you work your way deeper into the board, you have to experiment more and more with what it's got. Turning them around trying to work out which bits fit with each other, it might lead you down a few dead ends, but eventually you'll join them up, and you'll finish the path. Which unfortunately doesn't really give you any real climax, as it's just a message saying, well done. No animation, no fanfare, no nothing, it's just a bit of text. It's a nice enough game for what it is, but it really could have done with a little bit more panache to push it over the edge. And if you thought that was simple, well, we now have Maze. a game where you guide this face through a maze, but you can only move it to an intersection. And it's very sensitive to where you can click. Be over a wall slightly and it will put a message on the screen that you'll have to clear to be able to then move again. It's really quite annoying. As is the fact there's only 2 mazes, that's it. This feels like it was a demo for the game framework than an actual game itself, as we've seen the basics of this in a few games already. But let's move on to the last game of the episode, which is Rings of the Magi. That starts with an honest to goodness intro, talking about the Magi and that they needed to make some rings. As their powers were fading. And all of this obviously leads to a puzzle game where you match up coloured rings. And this is done by using the buttons on the side of the screen, which will move the whole row or column. And rings will vanish if just 2 of them touch. So if you have 3 of a colour, you'll need to plan out ahead to make sure they all connect at the same time. It's a fun little game, and if you manage to complete a level, you even get this small bit of voice and animation.
You shall be known as a master of the rings.
And then you get a new puzzle to solve. And they do get fiendish quite quickly as well. And later levels even introduce additional movement types, like moving rows and columns at the same time. But thankfully, if you're having some issues, then you can just use the solve button, and that will show you how to complete the level. This is the full game from what I can tell, and has several difficulty levels, each with their own set of maps, so there's actually a lot of content for you to get through. And all in all, this is very polished, as it even comes with a level editor, which is a simple graphical interface that allows you to place the arrows, the rings, and then set out how you want it to be completed. And with that, I feel we're come to the end of the interesting games, as the rest are a mix of card games like several variations on solitaire, or a few peg jumping games, as well as the consistent favourite, a jigsaw puzzle. And I think we've seen so many of these types before that there's not too much point in going over them now. And after going through 3 of these discs, I feel we can start to rank them. So in first is the Red Edition. Second is this one, 201. Which means last has to be that very poor yellow disc. And I've still got a few more of these, so it'll be interesting to see how this table changes over time. And if you think I'm wrong, or if you played any of these games before, then let me know down in the comments. And until next time, I was the Goldfish, that was definitely better than yellow, and this was Goldfish on Games. Thanks for watching, I do hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, I've covered 2 other discs in the past, so you might want to check them out if you haven't already done so. Or you could have a fiddle with the buttons down below. You know the ones I mean, as they really do help the channel out. Either way, I hope to see you again soon.